G'day guys, Tim here, the guy in the hat with, of course, the Baron of Bitcoin from Stormrake. What he doesn't know about cryptocurrencies, you could write on the back of a postage stamp. How are you, Bish?
I'm feeling good, brother. How are you?
Feeling pumped after interesting solo rant last night. But anyway, we're back in the trenches. You got to have your moments, don't
Got
you,
to have your
Bish?
moments. I appreciate you having me on for a brief second there as well. I made sure that it was a very brief appearance because the solo rant is a thing I'm a big fan of.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you on because you're a font of knowledge. Now, that's what we've got you on here for today, Bish, because of course the markets are all over the place at the
Yes.
moment. Derivatives for me look a little dodgy, but gold, silver, Bitcoin are holding up beautifully. Can you explain what's going on?
So we've witnessed a massive change of market structure and regime. We have just witnessed a correlation break between Bitcoin and Nasdaq because since the big COVID print of 2020, where they pumped in trillions of dollars worth of USD in order to stave off a economic collapse in the US whilst they locked everybody at home, what we've seen is Bitcoin trading in lockstep with the Nasdaq. So it traded like Microsoft, it traded like Google, it traded like Tesla, which is high volatility to the upside. And then when financial conditions tightened, and there was concern around how well the US economy was going, Bitcoin traded down as well. We went from 70,000 to 15,000 in 2022 on the back of those exact same things. And meanwhile, Google, Tesla, and all of them had 30-40% corrections. Now, they started to pump up Bitcoin ETFs. There was a strategic Bitcoin reserve. We went from 15,000 to 109,000 since 2023 to the start of 2025. And then at the start of the Liberation Day, we were trading still like a US tech stock where we got smashed. We came down from 88,000 to a low of 75,000, right? But what I would like to point out and highlight is that from Trump's Liberation Day of April 2nd, Bitcoin is up 8% nearly, and gold is up 10.5% since Liberation Day, right? And meanwhile, US treasuries and US stocks have been absolutely
Mm.
smashed. The US dollar annihilated. So we're watching for the first time in probably over 6 years the Bitcoin market not being correlated to the NASDAQ or US tech stocks. This is a massive fundamental shift in the markets that I cannot understate. Is better than any price action that I can just, of course, Bitcoin ripping to all-time highs is inevitable, but the fact that it's occurring at a stage where market conditions are as strong as they are and they're eventuating where we're expecting them to trade at, Bitcoin breaking away from US tech stocks is only just the beginning of a massive, massive
But
shift.
has it always been that way? I wonder whether it's always been that way, but we were waiting for market conditions to reveal the true power of what Bitcoin really is. It's almost like this Superman Clark Kent moment where Bitcoin, it seemed to trade like a tech stock, but now all of a sudden it's becoming obvious its decentralization, its counterparty risk properties. I don't know. I wonder whether it's always kind of been an outlier like that. I don't know.
It's always had those properties. The thing is that in a sovereign debt crisis, which the US is now facing, which is nobody wants US government debt, and they're having to make the decision as to whether they sacrifice the treasury market and the ability to fund the government, or whether they're going to sacrifice the US dollar and hyperinflate the debt away, which I think is the latter, that they're going to make the choice to sacrifice the US dollar. In those circumstances, where do you put your capital? Right? Where do you put your capital? You don't want to be exposed to US stocks. So you sell US stocks. Now you've got US dollars. Now, what are you going to do with your US dollars? You're going to repatriate it and put it back into your local currency. Are you going to put it back into Thai baht, euros, pound sterling, right? Maybe Swiss francs. People have been seeing some strength in their local currency against the US dollar. The Aussie has had a small resurgence against the greenback, going from 60 cents to 63 cents. But these are minutia movements, right? What people are deciding and what capital allocators around the planet, I'm talking from the institutional level right down to the retail punter, they're waking up and going, what do I do in a world where bonds are not safe, stocks are not safe, my local currency is not safe, the US dollar is not safe? What can I put my funds towards to beat inflation and provide for my family and stave off poverty? And then gold has gone 40% up in a year against the US dollar, which is astonishing,
Yeah.
right? With not even 4 months in, which is a massive, massive improvement on what we've seen over the last decade. But people are starting to wake up and realize Bitcoin provides me the same level of protection, just in a different way. It's a digital asset, it's portable, it's sovereign, it's globally recognized the exact same way gold is, but central banks are stockpiling gold at record levels. Bitcoin is being stockpiled in corporate treasuries at record levels. And I think that the everyday person can benefit from holding both.
Oh, yeah. This transition to a Bitcoin standard reminds me very much of the bimetallic shift to fiat currencies. So for centuries, we were on a bimetallic standard. In the US, the entire United States was founded on a bimetallic standard. And then it wasn't really until the middle of the 19th century we started to see the introduction of paper. And it was the same then as it is now. The introduction of paper was like, this is just going to go away. This is going to disappear. Now we've got Bitcoin. The only difference is Bitcoin is a store of value. Paper started out as a store of value because they were certificates back in those days.
That's right.
And then it transferred to dollars that were worthless after April 5th, 33. So I see
Look at the timing: April 5th, 1933, April 2nd, Trump's Liberation Day. Everything happens in cycles, and the fact that you've done so much research in that, just you should be proud of you.
Well, interesting that Wall Street collapsed in the October, and I've recently watched the Bank of England saying that they're not ready to move to ISO till October. Now, there's a whole lot of other things going on, like Pope just passed away. Klaus Schwab, and so there's a whole lot of Katy Perry.
Klaus Schwab going to become the Pope?
Look, or Katy Perry. I mean, she flew into space on a fake mission. So I mean, there's so much going on in the world, and these are just a massive distractions.
Yes.
But the real party, the real fireworks, is what's going on these markets, and you've got a front seat view with Bitcoin.
It's delicious, and I think that what people need to realize is that what gold is doing now, everybody should be celebrating that win right now. Because silver and Bitcoin are going to play massive catch-ups. I'll let the Samurai of Silver speak about silver, but Bitcoin and silver have comparable market caps, and the Bitcoin is traded like a tech stock for 4 or 5 years, and silver has been trading like an industrial metal for a decade or so. So we've got these correlations with markets that are not actually reflective of the qualities of these assets.
Absolutely.
Right. And so whilst the market is still trying to get its head around how do we trade silver? How do we trade Bitcoin? What is its properties? When people realize that gold is fantastic as it should be recognized, it's gone up 40% in the year against a failing US dollar, people will say the catch-up move in Bitcoin and silver in hindsight will be very obvious, super obvious, especially when Bitcoin goes to 150,000 US, silver goes to $50 US. It'll be happening in no time, and people are going to look back and go, "That was so obvious. That was so." Gold ripped up 40%, and Bitcoin was down 10% for the year, and silver was flat for the year, up 2%. Why did we not allocate towards Bitcoin and silver? They're going to be saying, the writing was on the wall. US dollar was collapsing. Treasuries are collapsing. Gold was ripping. Silver flat. Bitcoin slightly down on the year. Why did we not see it? Why do we not see it? And this is why it's so important to recognize that when you're early to the trade, it's not going to, when you're well positioned, it might take the market a month, a year, 2 years. How long were the gold bugs screaming about gold melting up, right? Over a decade, right? Since the 2011 gold market peak, there was, nearly 15 years since then, 14 years since then, where they were saying gold's going to have a melt up, gold's going to have a melt up. And then during that time, underperformed stocks and other assets. And then the moment that it just happened overnight.
Yeah.
It happened now over the last 20 years, gold has outperformed stocks on a cumulative return basis. But you had to face 10 years of isolated underperformance to be right pretty much overnight. And that's what's going to happen with Bitcoin. That's what's going to happen with silver. We were trading like a tech stock. We're trading like an industrial metal. The correlation break is going to happen overnight. We're already witnessing that now. Last night, $1.5 trillion got wiped from the stock market. $60 billion was added to crypto. Bitcoin went up 3.5%. Most of the tech market, US stocks, went down 3%. So you missed out on 6% gain between the two losses and the gains, which is about the average return of the Australian stock market over the last 20, 30 years. That's the opportunity cost that you're missing out on, is that it's not just about not having Bitcoin exposure. It's about being positioned in assets that's going to literally wipe you out in a sovereign debt crisis and a global reset.
100%. Now, the thing that investors really want to know, this is the big question, is you are absolutely adamant about a couple of things. One, that we are early to this asset, and two, that it's going to rip to the upside. You don't even talk in platitudes here. You're saying it will tear to the upside.
Yeah.
What I'm really interested in, what we'd really like to get across to the investors, is why do you see Bitcoin going so hard to the upside?
I mean, my own lived experience, guys, my own lived experience, the commercial bank shut me out of the banking system. I was in a foreign country with my family, my wife and my two kids. And because I practice what I preach, I had like a couple of $100 worth of exposure to the banks. And I was still able to give my family an awesome experience because I converted Bitcoin to Thai baht at better conversion rates than I would have been able to convert Australian dollars to Thai baht, because it's a globally recognized asset that people actually want, right? I cannot understate to you the disparity between what Bitcoin does for an individual and how it currently trades, how it's priced. And that discrepancy in value, that is where I have made my fortune, which is initially in foreign exchange. I was an arbitrager. I recognized disparities in currency pair valuations, and I was able to trade against them, right? Between the Euro Aussie to the Aussie Swiss franc to the Swiss franc Euro, I was able to play them off against each other. That's where I made my first $100,000, right? As a young FX trader. Now I'm actually identifying the same disparity between the value that Bitcoin provides an individual and the price that it's trading at. And at sub $2 trillion in market cap, whilst gold is now worth close to 24 trillion, it added $7 trillion this year alone, which is 3 times the market cap of Bitcoin added into gold in 4 months. The catch-up move for Bitcoin is going to be absolutely biblical. I remain bullish. I remind people you're not bullish enough, because this catch-up move will have people calling me in the dead of night, asking me to allocate them 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, $1 million when Bitcoin's trading at 150,000. That same level of panic and fear shouldn't be happening at the highs. It should be happening now. I was calling everyone. I got my staff. You came to the office. I got all my staff to call all our clients when we hit 80,000 US. I said, this is screaming buy, buy, buy at 80,000. Now, granted, we went to 75, but I mean, I'm 100% that 80K was the low, right? We had a little deviation, went to 75. Now we're trading at 88, right? This move cannot be understated, how important it is that we've broken the correlation with US tech stocks, because whilst everything, Tesla, Amazon, Nvidia, Google, Microsoft just got hammered, Apple hammered, right? Bitcoin ripped. And this is something that I've been praying for 4 or 5 years now, and it's happening. You don't want to catch up or play catch up when Bitcoin's already melted to 150, 200K. Granted, it's still going to go a lot higher than that, but there's value in the investment, in the trade right now. That's what I'm highlighting.
So just and quickly, because I want to keep this nice and little sweet and boutique-y.
Yes.
But because we could talk about this all day, but can you see Bitcoin moving so quickly that it creates a lockout move?
Well, we saw it last year, right? November 5th, we traded at 66,000. By December 8th, we were trading at 108,000. That's a bang. We added 10K a week for 3 weeks.
And it hit around 110?
109 and
109?
just before the inauguration.
So at 110, we're into price discovery, and from there,
absolutely. Look at what happened with gold. Gold ripped through 2,800 because it came into that level late last year, kind of fell off, and then when we ripped through 2,800, there was no stopping. 2,900, 3K, 3.1, 3,200, 30.3. Now we're trading at 3.4. It's going to rip to 3,500, right? And all the while through, everybody was calling a top, calling a top at 29, calling a top at 3K, calling a top at 30.
Oh, mate, they were calling a top at 1,800 when I started my channel. They said it'll never go beyond 2,000. That's it. It's like what you, well.
Same thing will happen with Bitcoin when it breaks through 109, 110. It'll just melt faces. It'll rip to 120, 130, 140, 150 before you know it. Same deal with silver, right? Silver will break through its $50 all-time high set back in the 80s, and it will just melt faces.
And even more so, I mean, with the loss of confidence, as we see derivatives markets come off a little bit, the Aussie dollar confidence lost. I think you could see this tear incredibly hard because it is a safe haven asset. It's a volatile safe haven asset, but it's
Absolutely.
still a safe haven
The
asset.
volatility is your friend, ladies and gentlemen. The volatility is why you want to actually pick up Bitcoin, because it gives you that immense upside. You don't want to just purely be exposed to Bitcoin because the volatility can really scare the bejeebus out of people. Whereas if you're just exposed to gold, you've just got this steady earner that's going to do quite well over time. Combining the two together is where you get maximum value. The last thing I want to leave you guys with that is super important to realize is Bitcoin, regardless of what the naysayers will have to say, regardless of what people will say about it, it doesn't matter. It's a pristine monetary network. I got to use it in Thailand with no restrictions, no permission required whatsoever. And I got access to a currency, Thai baht. I'm going off to Dubai next week for a conference, right? I have $0 in a bank. I've got no bank account access, and I'm yet unaffected. Book the holiday on Bitcoin. Going to the hotel on BTC. Going to convert Bitcoin to Emirati dinar locally, and I'll be able to live life like a king there, like a sultan. Right? People don't recognize and understand yet how important Bitcoin is in a global monetary reset. Bitcoin was born out of a debt crisis that occurred in the global financial crisis. If you look at the first block that was ever mined in Bitcoin, going back to 2009 here, it's got inscribed on the Bitcoin block, the very first one, Chancellor on the brink of another bailout, because they were bailing out banks left, right, and center, and the way they were doing that was printing currency. You can't print Bitcoin. It's a proof of work monetary asset that's going to save us from destitute and poverty, right? Alongside gold and silver. In my humble opinion, if you go to asset market cap rank, look at the assets that are worth more than Bitcoin and silver right now. You've got names like Nvidia and Apple and Microsoft worth more than Bitcoin and silver today, right? And gold's trading at $24 trillion in market cap. In my humble assessment, Bitcoin, gold, and silver will be number 1, 2, and 3. Let's say gold number 1, silver number 2, Bitcoin number 3. I don't really care for the pecking order, but we are going to be the 3 largest assets on the planet, worth over $100 trillion combined. Combined, Bitcoin, gold, and silver is worth less than 28 trillion US. Nothing. We're a drop in the ocean. We are going to be worth more than 100 trillion combined, right? Which is still 1/3 of the size of the global debt market today. We're so early to this trade. And I think you've got a friend who said, Lynette Zhang, I'd rather be 10 years too early than a second too late.
Correct.
I'd rather be 10 years too early than a second too late. And you just got to be patient. That's all that you have to do.
Absolutely. Well, that's we'll wind it up there, Bish, because I wanted this to be a little punchy episode. But of course, well, the big message of the day is what should people be buying?
Buy Bitcoin. Focus on Bitcoin. This is a global monetary reset. You want to be holding monetary assets. You want to be holding Bitcoin, gold, and silver. There'll be a time where we can explore alternatives. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big risk on type of character. But during this time, when we're watching Bitcoin become monetized, we're watching silver become remonetized, and Bitcoin break its correlation with the NASDAQ and silver breaking its correlation with industrial metals. Now is the time to be allocating to monetary assets before they get remonetized.
100%. And again, thank you for giving up your time today,
Thanks,
sir. The Baron, it is an absolute honor to share this journey with you, and your knowledge is exemplary, and it's a gift actually to the people, because you can't get this on mainstream media, Bish.
No.
They don't seem to be talking about this much. All right, that's it for me. The Baron of Bitcoin from Stormrake. Of course, what he doesn't know about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, you could write on the back of a postage stamp. What do you say? What's your catchphrase?
You're not bullish enough. Get out there, be a bull, be relentless, and just keep on winning, guys.
Absolutely. And of course, myself from Beat the Reset, the guy in the hat. As always, what do we say at Beat the Reset?
Make good choices.
Make good choices. Look after your family. See you soon.